interviewing with Miss Nancy Donnell Pineda. Miss Pineda lives in Tucson, Arizona, and works with the Wellness Council of Arizona, and as a hobby teaches the Bradley method. So, your profession is working as a worksite wellness coordinator. What do they particularly do?
Thanks, Noah. I'm really delighted to be here with you today doing this interview. And yes, I love my job as a worksite wellness coordinator. Actually, my job is a little bit more involved than that. Um, Typically, a worksite wellness coordinator is someone who works with a single company and they plan activities for the company based on the health and wellness needs of the employees of that company. My job is a little bit bigger than that in that with the Wellness Council of Arizona, I'm one of the associate directors and I manage several companies and I create their worksite wellness programs based on the needs of each of those individual companies. So that's a little bit of an overview for you.
Thank you. What type of companies do you normally work with your, profession?
Yeah, it's a wide variety of companies. We have everything that those that I'm working with personally under my accounts. I have an auto dealership, and it's actually one of the biggest in Arizona, and that's just a lot of fun. So I get to when I'm functioning as a health coach at that site. So I do visit the sites too. When I'm functioning as a health coach there, I get to walk through the service bays and talk to the technicians. I get to go into the office areas and talk to those who are working at the computers. So that's one type of worksite setting. Another one is I have the power company here in Tucson. So that's mostly an office setting. And then we have very large companies that are over 1,000, 2,000 employees, and smaller companies as well that are maybe 100 or under 100 employees. One of my colleagues takes care of the Tucson Unified School District here in Tucson. And that's, quite a large district.
Wow, so that sounds like a lot of work for you. Has there been any struggles due to the pandemic that has restricted you from going places and like helping?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely there has been. In those work sites that primarily function in an office setting, many of those employers have sent their employees to work from home. So many of them are working remotely. And we had to adjust as well. So back in March, when this was evident that employers were going to shift their employees to remote working, we knew we needed to stay connected with them. And particularly since we work in the wellness field, our role in the employees' lives is very, very important in helping them get reliable health information and stay connected. So we had to shift. We went to largely remote working as well and connecting with each of the employees that we work with via Zoom and phone call and FaceTime and, just pretty much any technological connection that we could make with them. There are a couple of work sites that were considered essential work sites where they retained most of their employees on site. So that meant that we would do some remote working for them as well. But for many employees, we just had to put on our masks, wash our hands or wear gloves and respect that social distancing guideline, which we did. So we've made some adjustments and it's worked out really well for us and for those that we serve.
So it sounds like you're taking every precaution that you have to take to stay with these work sites and stuff. So I'm gonna jump over to what I'm going blank here. What inspired you to choose this career for you?
Oh, you know what? I kind of fell into it. So it's a really fun story, Noah. I chose to go back to school. I had almost finished my degree when I was young. I only had 18 credits left to go, and I didn't finish my degree. And so after my children were a little bit older, my youngest was about 8 years old at the time, maybe 10 years old, I thought, you know what, this is a good time for me to go back and finish my degree and create more of an income for our family and a career path for myself. So I went back to college and didn't really know at the time exactly what I wanted to focus on, but I just loved wellness, nutrition, exercise. I loved all of that. So I looked for a major that could fulfill that satisfaction for me. So I found an online program, believe it or not. It was remote back then, and this was, more than 10 years ago. So I finished up my degree with a remote learning environment, and my degree was in sport management with a focus in fitness and wellness. In my senior year, my very final semester of college, I had to write a paper about fitness trends. And I looked down the list. It was the top 20 fitness trends in the United States. And I thought, you know what? I always go for the underdog. So what's number 20? And number 20 was worksite wellness. And I looked at that and I thought, what is that? And so I started doing my digging. I'm online and I'm typing and searching for what worksite wellness is. And I found that there's a nonprofit organization here in Tucson that specializes in worksite wellness. So I picked up the phone and I gave them a call and said I was writing a paper and could I interview them? I got to interview the executive director of the company. I was just astounded that they, little me, they let me in the door to interview the executive director. So I had a wonderful interview, wrote up the paper, and then I gave the paper to the executive director. His name is Dan Johnson, by the way. He's my boss now. And I asked him if he would review it so that he could make sure everything was accurate and he could make corrections. Well, he read it and he said, I really like the paper, and can I submit it to the board of directors? So my chin was down to my chest, like, and I said, sure, yeah. And the board of directors called him back and said, you need to hire her. Is she hireable? Can you hire her? So I wasn't even looking for a job, but it really fell into my lap. And I'm just really, really grateful for how that happened. And I've been with the Wellness Council of Arizona for the last 10 years, just celebrated my 10-year anniversary.
So when you were hired, what was the first position you were put in?
Yeah, like most people, they start you at the bottom. And so I was hired as a health coach, and my very first position was only 4 hours twice a month. So it was extremely part-time. And it was nothing that I was going to be able to pay the bills on or anything like that. But it was in the door. And so as a health coach, what I got to do was be the person to visit the one company that they assigned me and sit down with the employees one-on-one as they wanted to. So it was all voluntary, and discuss their wellness needs with them. So typically what we would talk about is what their goals are. Many people want to lose weight, or they want to get in better shape, or they have some type of goal. So we would talk about their nutrition and their exercise. And we also include in their stress management, because that's a big part, especially this year, right? 2020. People's stress is just through the roof. So we include that as part of what we talk about with people. That was my first job.
So what goals and accomplishments have you made to get to the position you're at right now?
Yeah, that was a slow build, and I think it was very appropriate. Little bit by little bit, I was given more responsibility, and that's that is pretty typical for how it goes in a work site. So my one employer group that I met with twice a month then turned into another employer group where I had more hours available to me. And I was also given the opportunity to help them design programs. Now, you asked me early on, what is a worksite wellness coordinator? The second company that I went into didn't really have a worksite wellness coordinator. So I kind of helped fill that role for them. And not only did I meet with their employees one-on-one for health coaching, but I talked with my boss and said, these employees would probably enjoy doing a wellness contest. So those would be things like maybe a weight loss contest where we give them 12 weeks or 4 weeks, however length of time we feel is appropriate for them, to step on the scale. So I would walk around carrying a scale and let people step on it, and weigh them in at the beginning of the contest and at the end of the contest, and then just give them helpful tips along the way to help them meet their goal for weight loss, or it could be a nutrition goal or an exercise goal, getting to the gym so many times a week, or whatever it is. So I went from just one-on-one coaching to developing programs, and then I had other coaches who would come work with me, and I had the opportunity to then start to lead them. So then it just gradually shifted into more of a management role, and eventually my boss developed a position called associate director, and he invited me and three other colleagues to become associate directors. So pretty exciting how that growth happened.
Wow. So what do you think is the greatest impact you've made on a company or person per se?
Wow, that is really, really hard to quantify, because each person's life is so unique and so special. And I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people over the years. And it may just be something as simple as being able to reassure someone that um, that they're on the right track, that they're okay, and that they have an ally. So something just real simple, like giving somebody just a little boost of confidence. But I think my favorite story rather, is the story of an individual who's a gentleman who's middle-aged, so a little bit older than you, kind of like my age, and and he had a very stressful job and worked full time, rarely had time for himself. But he also had a friend who was in the same business, and his friend had a heart attack and died. And so this gentleman came up to me and said, "You're my health coach, right?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I really need to talk to you because," and then he explained the story of his friend who died. And he said, I could be him. I'm the same age. I have the same job. I have the same stress. I'm the same weight. Everything is the same. I don't want that to be me. What do I need to do?" And so I said, "Well, let's start where you're at. What are you doing right now for your nutrition and your exercise?" And he's like, "Well, not much." So I said, "Okay, well, let's just get you walking, maybe walking after work." And he said, I can't do that. I don't have time." And I said, "Do you have 5 minutes sometime during the day? Like, do you get to take a bathroom break?" And he said, "Yeah, of course, I can find 5 minutes during the day." I said, "Okay, so take that 5 minutes and just take a walk around the building." And he said, "That's not going to do anything. 5 minutes of walking, that's not going to help me lose weight." And I said, "Just trust me on this, okay? Because what we're trying to do is we're not trying to get you to run a marathon. We're trying to get you to just build the habit of exercise so that you enjoy it, and it will build on itself." Well, don't you know, Noah, he started walking 5 minutes every day. And pretty soon, other employees at that same business were like, what is he doing out there walking? And they started poking fun at him. And then they started seeing the weight come off of him, because that 5 minutes a day developed other healthy habits in his life as well. And pretty soon he had people walking with him as he was outside walking. It was really kind of fun. And then between January and May of that year, he built up to the point where he was exercising after work as well. And he was regularly walking, or running actually, a 5K almost every day. And I told him one day, I said, "You're doing a 5K. Why don't you just actually sign up for a race and get the t-shirt?" And he looked at it, because we were looking at his phone. So had his phone, where's my phone? Had his phone, had his tracks on his phone. And he said, "Yeah, I am." "You're doing a really great job. Just, you've got this. You've got this nailed." So then he was so excited and inspired that he started doing a little bit of weightlifting, just to build some strength. And by October, the end of October of that year, so 10 months into that process, he had lost 80 pounds. His blood pressure came down. His numbers on his lab work were much better. And he was probably in the best shape that he'd been in about 20 years. So stories like that, just when he came back to me and said, "Thank you, you saved my life." What do you do with that? To feel that someone else feels like you saved their life. I know he saved his own life, right? But because he did the work, but to have that kind of influence in someone's life is really very satisfying.
Okay, so that was a really great story, and I enjoyed it. So I'm gonna jump over to the Bradley method since I know that's one of your hobbies that you enjoy to do. So, what particularly is the Bradley method? To Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I started doing the Bradley method, and we'll get into that, what that is in a minute, um, before I did anything else. So that was my first job, actually. And it's always been a hobby job, meaning it's not something that I could ever do full time for a living. So the Bradley method is just the name of a childbirth education method. And I know a lot of people, maybe young people, are like, what is that? So when someone is expecting a baby and they're pregnant, they kind of want to know what's involved in this. What do I have to do in order to actually give birth to this child? And some people will choose to, as they see their doctor, just talk to their doctor. And when it's time to go to the hospital and give birth, they'll just go to the hospital and not ask a lot of questions or not really inform themselves too much. They just count on everybody else to take care of them. And that's somebody's choice. If they want to do it that way, that's perfectly fine, if that's what works for them. But there are also a slice of people who are really curious and really want to know what can I do to participate in this birth process, to know what's going on and to feel confident. And on top of that, a lot of women are given medication during the birth process. And, to some degree, more or less, it may or may not always be necessary. And so there are many women who want to try to avoid unnecessary medication because of the way they fear it may affect them or it may affect their baby. So if you think about it, Noah, before modern science, women were giving birth for thousands of years without drugs involved in it, without medication. Now, and I'm sorry, this is turning into a long story, but this is something I'm also very passionate about. Um, Thousands of years ago, up to maybe the last 200 years, women could give birth without medication. Those births didn't always go really well, though, also. So sometimes mothers died in childbirth or babies died in childbirth. So now we're living in a time where we have the best of both worlds. We have the best of science and technology, where if a woman needs help in labor, like she needs to um, have medication during the labor or have surgery during the labor, we can do that. And if a woman wants to try to do things as naturally as possible, we can do that too. And we can do it safely. So that's just a little bit about what the Bradley method is. And I started teaching it after I had my first baby, and all three of my children were born without medication, and really, really a great experience for me and for my family.
So, while you were learning about the Bradley method, was that the first encounter you had with it, or were there previous encounters?
Yeah, I did not know at all about the Bradley method when I was young, when I got married, when I was first pregnant, because it's not something that you typically study about as a young person. Thankfully, my husband knew some friends in college who were Bradley method instructors. And so I was one of those people who thought, well, I know my mom just went to the hospital and came home with a baby. So I'm just going to go to the hospital and come home with the baby. That's how it works, right? And my husband said to me, I think we have some more options available. How about if we explore our options? So together we started reading and learning, and through a self-education process, we found out that we could take there are a lot of different classes that you could take for childbirth, but we chose the Bradley method because it was just so comprehensive. So much good information was available to us through that method. So that's when I found out about it, was through my husband, who knew about it from friends before that.
So what led you to do this as a hobby?
I don't know if I can really, really characterize what it feels like after you have a baby born naturally, and it's this beautiful family-centered experience where your husband is there, the midwife is there, your baby is born, you get to hold the baby immediately. And of course, that's a best case scenario where the baby is healthy and everybody's healthy and it just goes really smoothly. But there's a lot of joy associated with that. And the birth went really fast. Sometimes women spend 24 to 48 hours in labor. Okay. So that's like maybe running a marathon for that long. I don't know if anybody who really wants to do that, right? But my labor was really fast. It was only 3.5 hours for my very first baby, and that is super, super short. So we felt that there's genetics involved in that, but we also felt that our knowledge and our confidence in understanding the birth process and just really trusting the body to give birth the way the body is intended to was a big help to us. And so the midwife looked at me after 3.5 hours of labor and said, this went really well. You might think about teaching Bradley method classes. And so my husband and I looked at each other and went, yeah, we'd like to do that. And so we started the certification process soon after my daughter was born.
Wow. So, what are the usual reactions people have when they are learning?
When they take my classes or when I talk about the Bradley method?
When they take your classes.
So people who take my classes have usually already done their homework. They've already been online. They've been surfing the web, looking for information. They are probably already pregnant. And so probably are in connection already, getting prenatal care from their doctor or their midwife. So I don't typically get people who are uninformed. Most of the time, those who call me or send me an email will say, hey, I was looking online and I found you. I found information about the Bradley method and I'd like to know more about your classes. Or they'll pick up the phone and say, hey, I was talking to my sister-in-law who had her baby by the Bradley method, and she said, I need to find a Bradley method instructor. Can you tell me more about it? So many people are informed to begin with, and they're very, very positive and enthusiastic about it. What's interesting, Noah, is the dads. Okay. So typically most of the people who come to me are a woman-man couple. Sometimes, most of the time, I would say they're married. Sometimes they're not yet married, but they intend to be married. And every once in a while, I've also had a same-sex couple. So it's a couple arrangement, most of the time female and male. And very often what happens is the woman, the pregnant mother, is very excited. And so she's all into the classes. And sometimes the father of the baby is excited. And sometimes he's just a little skeptical. He sits in class like this. He's like, tell me something I don't know. Okay. So the first 1 or 2 or 3 classes, he's really feeling it out. And by the 3rd or 4th class, I find that many of those dads of the babies are very excited because they've learned things that they didn't know, and they feel more empowered and more knowledgeable. So, so the reactions largely are very positive. I very rarely have any negative reactions at all. And if I do, it's usually from people who don't know anything about it and are not actually taking my classes.
So, are your classes virtual or in person?
Up until this year, they have been in person. And so the past, 30 some years that I've been teaching the Bradley method, I've been inviting couples into my home. And so in my living room, I have no furniture. All right. I have a big open empty space with walls and pillows all against the walls, and no sofa, no chairs, none of that, because the couples come in and we sit down on the floor and we do pregnancy exercises and we sit on the floor for the entire class. There's also a relaxation practice at the end of the class, which is what women who are giving birth need to learn the most, is how to just relax and let their bodies go through the birth process without getting in the way and fighting it. So this is kind of fun. This, for those that might hear this interview, just think of somewhere down the road, if you are either a father of a baby or a mother, and you're somehow involved in the birth process, you probably have seen on television where women who are giving birth are gripping the bed rails and they're screaming and they're going, ah! That's not really a good way to give birth. It's really fighting the body. So we teach women how to relax, how to let their muscles completely go, so that the only muscles that are involved in the birth process, for the most part, are the uterine muscles that push the baby out. So I need a lot of space to do that. And so I have no furniture, and people would come into my home to do that. However, in 2020, welcome pandemic, we really needed to make sure, because we really didn't know how the coronavirus was going to affect pregnant women or affect babies. I decided I am going to play it safe. And since I work in wellness and I'm a health professional, I want to make sure that I do everything in my responsibility to keep mothers and babies safe. So I started teaching birth classes by Zoom. And so my living room then turned into my computer screen, and I had couples that were sitting in their living rooms taking my classes, and it was interactive by Zoom and worked out really well.
So what are some of the negative sides of teaching it over Zoom instead of in person?
You know what? The only thing that I have found difficult, Noah, is that I can't have the personal touch that I would ordinarily have in one of my classes. So, for example, um, it's easier to make eye contact with specific individuals when you can look right at them and they know they're looking right at you. And it's hard to do. Like, I have to look into the camera right here to look right at you. So that part was difficult. But then also, when we would do the relaxation practices, sometimes I would come over to a mom who's lying down. So she'd be lying down on my rug with pillows stuffed around her, and her partner would be maybe on her back, rubbing her back. So kneeling behind her, rubbing her back. And I would come over and ask how they're doing, make some adjustments, make some coaching tips for the dad or the partner, and say, okay, maybe you want to adjust these pillows a little bit this way. How does that feel? So just a little bit more personal interaction. Haven't been able to do that by Zoom. But the responses I've received from my students who took my Zoom class were overwhelmingly favorable, that they really felt a good connection, and that they felt like they learned what they needed to learn, and they were really enthusiastic. So I guess maybe it's a situation of what you don't know. In this case, they didn't have anything to compare it to. So what they didn't know, as far as a comparison between live and virtual, didn't really affect them in any negative way.
I want to jump back to your worksite rules. So how has that been really affected by the pandemic?
Yeah, we had to switch over to virtual for that too. But in many ways, I have found it to be kind of a refreshing break this year to try some new things. So much more of my coaching, when I do coach one-on-one, is done in those virtual ways. So Zoom, FaceTime, phone calls. And it's actually been pretty successful in many ways, because one of the things that people hesitate about seeing a health coach for is that they're afraid other employees are going to see them visiting the health coach, and they're going to think, oh, something's wrong with that person because they're talking to the health coach. And that's not the way it is at all. I'm not a nurse, I'm not somebody who diagnoses illnesses, and I'm not a social worker or a psychiatrist or anything like that. So, there shouldn't be any stigma, but some people feel a little bit sensitive about it. But you know what? In their work site, when they go take a break, they can pick up the phone and they can talk to me, and nobody knows that they're talking to the health coach. So in that sense, it's been maybe kind of a bonus this year that we learned a new way to connect with our employees. Still, a lot of them are just anxious for us to come back on site because they really like that personal connection. We also had to shift some of our delivery of our programs to more virtual platforms. So remember I said that we do wellness contests, maybe it's a weight contest or a fitness contest. We can't see people in person to register them or to get them out of the challenge. So now we're having to use technology like Google Forms is now our preferred registration method. So, we never used that before. It's new to us, but now we're starting to implement it, and we found that it streamlined our process. So we'll probably continue going forward using that type of technology. So we've learned a lot this year. It's been helpful, but still, I feel the personal touch is so vital, especially when you're talking about people's health and wellness and mental and emotional well-being too.
Are you now 100% on the computer or phone, or are you still partially there?
Could you repeat that again? Because we cut out a
Uh,
little bit.
are you 100% online, or are you still going to places and doing it, but safely, or?
Yeah, right now, as of right now, I am probably 95% online. There is one work site that is not working exclusively remotely that's in my care. And I do have some regular people that I visit there. And so I bring my scale and we do the social distancing. We also have the opportunity to be outdoors with them. And here in Tucson, we can do that because it's this time of year, it's just absolutely lovely. So I will meet with those people outside, and I even do a stretch class outside. Just grab my cell phone, text those people that are usually involved um, in the stretch class, and say, hey, meet me at this location outside and let's do a stretch. And by stretch, I mean we actually physically stretch. So we'll do overhead stretches and shoulder stretches and that kind of thing. It's a lot of fun.
Uh, has it been easier to work from online versus in person, or was it easier in person than online?
Mm, that's mixed, Noah. There are days when, for me personally, it's so much easier to just be in one spot at my desk and connect with people online. I find it to be very efficient for me. So if I need to see a large number of people, I need to talk confidentially with them, there needs to not be any interruption. This it's working okay. But on the flip side, the opportunity to be in a work site and be able to walk through a work environment and see people and wave and say hi, and then just poke my head around a cubicle, or in the place of the automotive dealership to just like walk through the service bay and under or around a car lift. So there's like a car on a lift and I got to walk around it safely and go, hey, how you doing, John? You doing okay? Do you need anything today? That's easier in that respect, because those guys are not going to be picking up their phone and answering a phone call from me because they're busy, right? They're fixing your car is what they're doing. So I'm not their priority for the phone. But if I can pop my head in and just say, hi, do you need anything? They can look up from what they're doing. So it's mixed, and I think going forward, we'll probably keep parts of both of those. And when we can go back fully onto work sites, I think we need that. I don't think that will ever go away entirely.
Okay. So what advice do you have for the middle school audience, or is there like any uh, it, is there something that you wish you knew as a teenager that you would like to know for your job now?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I've given this a lot of thought because I think this is a very valuable question. And there are things that I know now that I didn't know as a teenager. Um, I am a daughter of two educators. So both of my parents were teachers, really, really respected and was involved in my education all the way from elementary school up through high school graduation. I personally valued education, but there were a lot of things that I didn't know. And I think maybe my parents didn't know too. So when I was in high school, I was trying to sift out what career path I wanted to take. And I knew that I wanted to spend a large portion of my life focused on being a mother. I felt that was really, really important, that I could spend time with my children and raise good human beings. So that was my top priority. But then I also wanted to be able to make a contribution to the world and have some personal success in other areas as well. And so I remember thinking that I maybe wanted to go into education, maybe serve overseas as a teacher, as an educator. And then I started looking at the field of medicine. And I had a good friend in high school who went on to become a doctor. And I thought, I really like that field too. Maybe what I really want to do is become a doctor. How many people can I help being a doctor? And I went to my guidance counselor, and I didn't know how to have that conversation with my guidance counselor. And I didn't know that there were scholarship funds available. I felt like they were available to other people, but not available to me. And you can ask any teacher. Teacher salaries are not the best in the world. They've never been paid what they're truly worth. So, we were always, as a family, we were always pinching pennies, and my parents just didn't have money to send me to whatever college or university I wanted to go to. I knew I was going to have to pay for my own education with very little support from my parents at all. Really no support from my parents, other than I think my mom bought me a plane ticket one time to fly me back home for vacation. But I had no financial support from my parents. And so I was in the mindset of, well, I can't go to medical school. I can't do these things because I don't have the money to do it. So the piece of advice that I would like to give for anybody who hears this interview is, don't say I can't. There's always a way for someone who has the will, the determination, the skill, the talents. If you've put your heart into and soul into developing yourself as a person, into getting good grades count. Character also counts. That's something that's looked at when things like scholarships are considered. I had a lot of great opportunities in high school. I just didn't know how to take advantage of them. So, the administrators of my school were wonderful. I received I received awards. I was part of the National Honor Society. I was given the opportunity to attend Badger Girls State. So I grew up in Wisconsin. It's the Badger State, but Girls State and Boys State are very, very renowned and respected opportunities for young people to learn more about our government. And I was chosen to go to Girls State. I didn't know what to do with it after that. So talk to your teachers, talk to your guidance counselors, talk to your administrators. Don't take no for an answer. Work to do whatever it is that you have your sights set on. And then be ready to switch gears if you need to, okay? Because whatever we think we might want to do when we're maybe a junior in high school might not be what we actually end up doing once we graduate from college. But to set a path and to go for it, and not just, don't say no to yourself. Don't say I can't. Kick I can't out of your vocabulary. It doesn't belong.
Well, thank you for doing this interview with me. This will be the concluding of it, and I would like to thank you for taking part out of your day to do this. So.
Noah, I'm very, very delighted to be here with you, and I wish